When you really think about the jobs to be done in language, there's a tremendous amount of complexity and a tremendous amount of nuance.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Slator Pod. Today it's round 3 with Georg Ell. Rounds 1 and 2 were so great, we asked Georg back. So Georg is the CEO of the Localization language tech platform Phrase. So Georg, it was June 2024 last time. So it's been nearly 2 years and it was time to do this again. Time flies. So thanks for joining.
That's crazy. Yeah. Wow. You're absolutely right. Time is flying very fast at the moment.
I did check it just before the podcast. I'm like, what? No, that was the first one we did. Then no. The first one was in 2023, and so this is then 2024. Now it's 2026. Science fiction.
Yeah.
All right. Look, we got a lot of stuff to cover today. I want to go through a bunch of stuff. Want to start with this kind of AI panic SaaS scare narrative that's out there. Want to go through build versus buy in LTP land, language technology platform, language and solutions, engineering teams and localization, the dynamics there. I want to talk about voice AI with you a bit as well, and your outlook, and probably a bunch more stuff. So first, do give us an update on what's happened since June 2024.
Yeah, that's a long time. That's a really long time. I was talking to someone else about this, like what's happened in the last year, and there's always a recency bias to what's happened in the last 4 weeks.
True.
But there's been huge changes and shifts and innovation at Phrase in both the product and also in the business model and the type of work we're doing with customers and so on. So how to summarize it, I would say we have a very simple strategy. We call it platform and ecosystem strategy. And we've had that for really quite some time. And I think it's relevant because actually we think it continues to be the right strategy into the future. So you could call it luck or judgment, but I think we actually set the groundwork and the balls in motion a couple of years ago to put us in a really good position today. So what do we mean, platform and ecosystem? Well, we've always had a very broad set of capabilities at Phrase and a very sort of deep set of capabilities, but in the company's also always been API first and webhooks and so on. But what we've really tried to do is invest a lot in working with customers and partners to have them build solutions on top of Phrase. So to be a platform that one can use, but an open platform. And that then bleeds into the ecosystem side of it, which is if you're talking about customers and partners building solutions on top of Phrase, then naturally there is an ecosystem of partners that you do that with, which takes us actually quite nicely, as you can see, into why is this the right strategy for the future? Because it's embracing buy and build instead of buy versus build. And we've kind of put walk the walk, if you like, or put our money where our mouth is quite a bit recently. And today, when people actually log into our platform itself, so not just on the website, but actually in the product, they can go to a Phrase ecosystem tab and they can see hundreds of solutions that we've integrated with and partners we work with in there. And what's sort of interesting and I think different here from what anybody else in the industry does is that the integrations that we're doing are actually actively seeking, in many cases, to integrate with companies that do things that we also do. In other words, a customer could do with us natively in our platform the things that we're integrating with. And what we're embracing is this heterogeneous world, customer choice, open platform, not, we're the opposite of kind of vendor lock-in. And we say to customers, if someone else delivers that particular workload that you want as part of the many steps in your overall workflow, in your opinion, for your use case, better than we do, then we'd rather that we embraced that, integrated it, allowed you to flow the data seamlessly backwards and forwards and had end-to-end analytics across the whole thing. And, all the layers of quality and orchestration and context that we bring around that workflow, rather than forcing you into a binary us or them choice or copy paste out into that platform. And customers love it. We've had a great reception to this concept. I think, from our perspective, we have a lot of pride in what we do. We'll continue to invest in improving those elements of our platform. And I'm very open with our partners that, they should also continue to improve in front of us. Otherwise, ultimately, the customers won't choose them in front of us. But this sort of embracing of an open ecosystem and build with is it's like the big shift over that sort of 18, nearly 2 year period, away from, the days of 2022, 23, when we were still kind of individual products sold together as a suite. Now it's a very much more mature content delivery, adaptation platform. I haven't said the word AI once in all of that, which is,
Congrats.
yeah, thanks. I win a prize. There's obviously been a huge amount going on there as well. Maybe we'll get into that. I've talked long enough without break.
So one of the drivers there is the kind of the realization of the complexity and the devil in the detail in the space that you're operating in, that like you can only force people into a rigid framework so much, and then is that one of the drivers here, and basically having a level of openness here, allows at the end of the day more customers to choose phrase.
We've never wanted to force people into a sort of rigid framework. We don't think customers want that either. There's there was a really interesting interaction I had with a customer in 2023, so nearly 3 years ago, and they basically said to me, "Your platform is now so broad, it does so much that I'm worried that I'm concentrating too much with you." Right? It was like, "Oh, that's an interesting problem. Like we're doing too good a job for this." So, we've always been kind of strategically neutral, vendor neutral, work with everybody, but we really wanted to open that up to the technology side of things too, and say to customers, look, we can and will be a place where you can spend a lot of money and you can concentrate a lot of your work with us. But if you, for any reason, whether it's diversification or better quality, or some of our partners will build services offerings on top of the technology, and we don't do that. So, someone else is doing something that you really value. Like I believe rising tide will float all boats. Ultimately, we want to orient around the customer's success. And if that customer's project is successful, their profile raises, they get to do more work, we've helped along the way, together with partners, everybody wins. The alternative, which is slightly defensive, lock-in kind of thing, I think is short-term, and people don't like it. That's not what they want.
I want to talk about, I mean, you're a software vendor, Hart, but you said it many, many times. You're technology only, no services. I remember that you were really happy when we launched the term LTP, Language Technology Platform, and you were one of them. So currently there's this kind of bifurcation. If you're perceived in the market as AI, you get all the billion-dollar funding and things like that. And if you're perceived as SaaS, there's been this weird sell-off, and some have called it the SaaS apocalypse. I mean, it's a bit, I'm not sure what I think about this term, but there's this narrative in the market. And in the public markets, for example, just to give one example, I mean, we're using a tool called Asana, phenomenal tool, love it. We work daily, every hour we're on it, right? And it's the stock's down 40% year to date, like 80% of whatever over the past 12 months. So how do you think about this? Maybe even like not really connected to phrase generally, but like this kind of, okay, AI gets the funding, gets the attention. You got that. Okay, maybe these AI tools cannot do everything that these very sophisticated enterprise-grade SaaS tools can also do. Like, how do you think about this current narrative?
It's a real phenomenon, and clearly the stock prices have moved, and there's a lot of people that are concerned about it. So it's just, and a lot of people are writing a lot about it. Have you noticed, by the way, that all the blogs you read have gotten longer as people are using AI to write them? It's like there needs to be a Mark Twain AI. I think it was him that, if I'd had more time, I'd have written less kind of thing. I'm absolutely butchering the quote, but yeah. So I think I get it. It's reasonable, right? AI is an incredibly disruptive phenomenon, and because it's disruptive and because it's changing quickly, it means that the event horizon, the sort of predictability horizon across which people can see has shrunk. And as a result, SaaS companies that were previously perceived as sort of 10-plus-year annuity streams, the same quality of business, same growth rate, same profitability, same amazing customer experience. People are just saying, like, do we still want to underwrite that 10 years into the future or 5 years into the future? We just don't know. And so that's like, I think the investor lens on it. It's not an entirely unreasonable point of view. Not all SaaS companies are the same. I think if you are a thin layer on top of models, then you're in not a great position. I think if you're a sort of point solution, something similar, something like Asana is pretty sophisticated, but at the same time, like task lists can be relatively easily rebuilt. And I think one of the questions people are asking themselves is, if I were to start from scratch, the company again, if I was to start over, what would I build and what would I buy in? Now, it's interesting. I was just looking at an AEO tool earlier today, and I looked at it, and my first thought was, well, I could build that. I mean, I could build that. And this is the extraordinary thing. Like, I didn't write a line of code in my life until about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I think my average bedtime over the last 6 weeks has been between 2 and 3 a.m. I'm coding every night.
Okay.
It's addictive. It's fun. I'm getting a lot done. I'm learning a huge amount. So I looked at this AEO tool and I thought I could build that. And then I looked at the price and it was like $100 a month. And I thought, $100 a month, unlimited users, it's not worth me building that. That would be a waste of my time. So I do think one of the interesting things is if you're a much more sophisticated, complex platform like a Workday or a Salesforce or something like that, it takes a huge amount of effort to rebuild that. So there's a sort of economic calculus at some point. If you're charging your customer $10 or $20 million a year for a SaaS license, then there's quite an economic incentive to say, I can get a lot of engineers to work on this problem for $20 million. If you're charging them $100,000 to $500,000, well, that's like, depending on where you are in the world, anywhere between sort of half of an engineer in Silicon Valley to, 2 or 3 engineers in Europe. You can't get a lot built and maintained and updated. So there's just a sort of economic calculus as well. If you charge so much that you create an incentive for people to rebuild it, then there's some risk there. So I do think maybe at that top end, or so pricing has to evolve a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we live in interesting times, and you do, as I think, as a software business, you need to be able to answer questions around competitive, sustainable differentiation and advantage and moats. And our answer to that is pretty simple: platform, ecosystem, quality evaluation, agentic orchestration, context, and a certain degree of system of record when it comes to like software strings. And you put all of that complexity together, there's a lot of like reasons, rights to exist, rights to win over adding value on top of the foundational models. And, like to rebuild what we have built inside a company, you would need, well, I have 140 product and engineering people, right? So divide that by 4,000 customers. The economics don't really make sense for rebuilding it, but it doesn't mean some people aren't like having a go, and it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really vibe code your way into like a super sophisticated enterprise grade SaaS, right? And I mean, just understanding the problem itself, yeah, is hard. So, I mean, over the past 12 months, when you talk to customers, you kind of mentioned it now, like this buy versus build. What are some of the arguments that are hearing from them, like the pushback, I guess, to you? Like they're saying, oh, we have an engineering team, you know what, they tried XYZ, like, why should we go with you, versus having the engineers spend some time on it?
Yeah. So we've seen lots of customers who've come to us and said, every time we run a hack day, the engineers say we can solve this problem, and every time we say no, thank you. Like at the end of the hack day, they try and fail. I think what I have seen, which is interesting, is some localization teams and engineering teams that are making investments the CFO would probably not approve of. In other words, I have seen one organization that told us, we've hired 20 engineers to rebuild what you build for us. And we charge that company $100,000 a year. So the maths doesn't stack up, right? And I've seen very large software business take an open source project and like invest 7 engineers' time in it. And again, like the maths just doesn't stack up. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is that people, there's a lot of enthusiasm, right? And like I love that enthusiasm. So what we're trying to say to people is you're keen to build. We're builders. So we're not going to stand in your way. It's awesome. Let's build together. Let's build on top of, instead of rebuilding the basics. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't make a worse version of, and don't have all the inherent risk of doing so. But also, you know, just think through the consequences, right? If you're successful, then people are going to want to roll you out in more and more use cases. You're going to get feature requests. You're going to have bugs. You're going to become a software company, right? Like that is painful. I know that, right? I have feature requests. I have bugs. I have to resolve those. So I think what people get wrong is that they can, sort of somebody builds a demo. The demo looks great. But the difference between building a demo and scaling it is like night and day. I mean, any engineer you speak to is terrified when the CEO says, "Hey, I've been playing with Lovable." And they're like, "Okay, show me what you built." And then I'll have built like a front end which looks awesome, but it won't scale. There is a difference between building the demo and then scaling it. There's also a difference between like building a front end and building infrastructure. And those are the kinds of problems that people are going to come into as they try and like recreate things that have taken, highly talented, large groups of people a long time to do.
Where would you rank localization, language solutions, language tech in that kind of temptation, on the temptation curve to build it? I mean, there's many things that these engineering teams could be thrown at.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Engineers are suddenly a lot more productive, and as a result, are getting through stuff a lot faster. And as a result, are looking for things to do. And we're seeing some of that in these big companies. Engineering teams looking for things to do. And I think translation, and I use that word very specifically, does feel like it's pretty low-hanging fruit, right? The thing that then happens, of course, is they show a demo. It looks like it works. An executive somewhere sees it and says, "Great, problem solved." And then they start to roll it out. And then they hit like quality, consistency, regulatory, scaling, latency, terminology. They hit all of these things and we need an approval. All right, we need a workflow. Oh, correct. And like before you know it, they've kind of rebuilt or are suddenly faced with the problem of rebuilding all the layers of what is actually quite a complex stack. Like when you really think about the jobs to be done in language, there's a tremendous amount of complexity and a tremendous amount of nuance. And that's that, and then it comes full circle.
So have you seen people come back from this experience and like,
Yes.
okay, we try it and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen them come back. I haven't seen a single one succeed. I haven't seen a single one say, "We're just going to put it all into LLM and be like, boom, done."
Shouldn't that be giving you like a ton of arrows in your argumentative quiver in terms of preempting such moves, like when you go into and speak to your existing customers?
We have an amazing roster of existing customers who are they're doing what they should be doing, right? So if we want to talk about AI from a slightly different angle, right? It's enabling so many new use cases. Over the last 18, 24 months, we've introduced capabilities like auto adapt, MT optimize, quality technologies, adaptation. We're about to do some pretty cool stuff in the next few weeks around how you can personalize content, how you can get nudged on where to use AI correctly, so that it can be used with greater confidence. We've seen obviously Studio, our multimodal product, come out. That's very AI powered. You've got like all sorts of different level ups that AI offers there, whether that is to do with kind of content summarization or tone of voice or increasingly like synthetic voice and dubbing and those kinds of things. There's bring your own engine now. So we're embracing the fact that customers want to build their own engines and then use those alongside third-party engines, and how we can help people to build or take one that is pre-built and then run quality evaluation for that against a panel of all the others so that that one can be improved, or they can make a selection whether that one they should continue to invest in or just use. There's so much sophistication here, where AI is actually helping people to do things they've never economically been able to do before. Yeah, that's the exciting thing for me. This content explosion, I think I probably talked about on the podcast 2 years ago.
I want to revisit that. Yeah, where do we stand with this kind of that hyper personalization? I had this experience that it's already 6 months ago, and I might have talked about it on the podcast before, but I was at the AWS summit here in Zurich, and somebody showed me like one application they had for localization, quote unquote, was watching Formula One, and then like every viewer would get a different type of ad shown when they
Yeah.
like literally like the bridge, like the car goes under the bridge, and then every user would see a different personalized ad there.
Yeah.
I think that was for some type of multimedia thing that was running on AWS. But yeah, your take on the progress or not, so of like much more personalized localization.
I feel like 2025 was largely a story of unrealized ambition around AI. So we still had in the, I mean, I think not even just the localization industry, I think the world at large, AI was still over-promising and under-delivering for much of 2024 and 2025 in terms of production-grade enterprise use cases. There are lots of good, lots of experimentation, lots of not good experimentation in the sense that much of it failed, right? There's a famous MIT study, and we saw a lot of that play out too. So how do I feel about 26? I think more optimistic, actually. I think we're starting to see the models improve, maybe not so much directly, specifically on translation. I think that's still relatively flat, but in all the ways you can augment around translation, I think there's now a lot more capability coming on stream. To the extent that, and test me on this in the next 2-3 months, I think we're going to change our website, and you're going to see the words translation and localization much less on our website. I've looked at all our competitor websites. They all say translation and localization everywhere. It's plastered everywhere. We're going to stop talking so much about translation and localization and about different things. And I think 26 is a year where some of this AI-driven personalization becomes more achievable, and therefore we'll start to see production grade use cases, production scale as well.
You also mentioned briefly the kind of multimodal and phrase studio. I believe you launched this like late May 2025. What's been the experience so far? Take up, problems, challenges.
This is an opportunity for some humility, actually. So we launched it with great excitement. We actually established a huge amount of interest. Like the interest blew us away. What we saw over the subsequent months was lots of people saying it's great, but so lots of people were looking forward to experimenting, looking forward to trying and buying it. Actually, like we built a big pipeline, as they say, and then just lots of folks said it's great, but not quite ready. And there was a few different reasons for that, many of which we've kind of addressed. So it was more or less a standalone product. It's now actually very integrated into the platform, so you can use phrase language AI across it. It integrates with translation memories and term bases and glossaries, and it integrates with our kind of translation management system like modules. There are new things we're going to launch in the next couple of weeks that are platform-wide, so they work across every element, including Studio, to do with personalization. So we integrated with Google Drive, which people want. There was like a ton of work we've done around quality and so on. And there was 2 phases to that improvement. The first phase was done before Christmas. The second phase will launch in the next 3 to 4 weeks, I think, thereabouts. So probably in a few weeks' time, we'll start reaching out to customers around early adopter programs for that like next phase of improvements in quality there. We're pretty excited. Like we've spent enough time talking to customers about the reasons they didn't buy it just yet, that we think we've understood that and hopefully cracked it. So yeah, like definitely an opportunity for a bit of humility, but still like very excited about the potential. And I think a lot of people want us to succeed because people like there are a lot of point solutions out there around video.
Yeah.
There really isn't one that's integrated into a broader platform. So there really isn't one that would allow you to have like a range of different engines, access to terminology, translation memories, quality evaluation, human in the loop, agentic work, like all of the things that we wrap around any content type. There really isn't a solution that's baked in or like can take advantage of all of that in the same way that Studio can.
Almost nothing. I mean, the UI of some of these is just atrocious in terms of not producing like the AI dubs or the subtitle. All of this is phenomenal, but the actual language part, if you wanted to tweak a 10 language version of whatever you're doing, it's like, okay, I have some type of box and I some manually kind of type, and there's, like even like something like a translation memory is in almost none of these, or in none of these. So I think there's big opportunity. Is there like one section of the market that has found it super useful? Like, can you give me a use case of somebody that well, okay, that solves my problem now?
One I like is learning and development, which is producing a huge amount of content. And I think L&D actually, and just enablement, let's use that phrase instead, I think is an area where localization broadly can add a huge amount of business value, which might actually segue into something I want to talk about a little bit. But I'll give you an example. An engineering firm that uses our platform told me 2 years ago that only just under 2% of their content was localized outside of English. And this is a company with 90 or 100,000 employees in lots of countries around the world, meaning that they would need to employ English language speaking field engineers to do, the repairs in every country around the world. So when you localize that enablement content, you have a bunch of business impacts, right? You reduce the time to hire, you reduce the cost to hire, you reduce the average salary potentially. You improve the fix right first time of that field service engineer because he or she's now operating in their local language and they're learning in their local language. And so if you bring multimodality into that as well, then again, you're improving all of those metrics that to do with ramp and quality. So I think learning or enablement works internally, it works with field teams and office teams, and it works with partners and channel teams. And particularly as the world is changing so fast around us all the time, the ability for an organization to ramp its people on whatever the latest thing is in their space becomes actually really important to survival, let alone competitive advantage. So I think a great opportunity for localization, generally speaking, and in particular something like video.
I want to talk briefly about voice, kind of voice AI, very hot over the past 3 to 6 months. And we hosted a very small voice AI meetup at our office in London. Like there's a kind of a meeting area where we had a few people there. It was very interesting. There was almost no overlap with the localization crowd, as it were. And even though one of the demos by one of the companies called Nuphonic, they had a kind of a very small model, and the demo they gave was basically like live interpreting, but it didn't think of it that way. They just thought of it as kind of a voice use case. Why do you think this voice AI kind of startup ecosystem, community, whatever you want to call it, isn't really connecting with the localization crowd yet? I'm not sure if I'm butchering this maybe, but I just, that's the feeling I'm getting.
I think our industry has been, kind of a bit inward looking for a long time. And like, it's funny, we were saying earlier how time flies. Everyone knows I stood up on stage as this sort of new kid 4 years ago, and I feel a little more embedded in the industry now. But from when I first joined and now, we're still all talking about how we don't do a good job about explaining our value, right? As an industry, that's the same old thing. So I do want to talk about that. And I think there's links to it in that we're still too often solving the same old problem, and we're still too often measuring our success in the same old ways. And so we're not thinking about multimodality in different formats. We're not, as an industry, thinking about reaching out and forming partnerships with voice companies or generative video companies or marketing and advertising agencies, in the way that we should be, because we're so focused, like myopically, on reducing the cost per word and reducing the spend on humans as a proportion of the total. Like the industry's, like, one of the challenges at the moment in localization is that every loc team is being asked to spend less, and that highlights the problem, right? The problem is that they're too often seen as cost centers, so just reduce the costs. And I think what localization teams are experiencing, like very sadly, is that when you have reduced all the costs, what's left is the team, and then you reduce that. So we as an industry, we need to tell a different story. And I mentioned some of it earlier. Language is in every interaction, right? It's like it's our input output. So when you get that right, it's not like good enough, right? It's about the impact that you want to have. So is it hiring people? Is it basket completion rate? Is it? So I built a tool. I'll give you an example. We'll put this on our website before long. In my vibe coding in the evenings between the hours of sort of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., I built a value tool which will research a company, and then the AI will determine that based on that company, here are the 30 different KPIs that have nothing to do with localization metrics, in which language might play a role. So if you're a mining company, the AI will come up with things for mining. If you're a food and beverage, right, same thing. And then it will put together the maths, the calculus, the algorithm for what the difference might be of good language, bad language, right? And put a number on it. And the numbers are huge because like tiny improvements of many factors across an industry, across a company. And so then you can work with that to help a localization team actually talk about the value that language has across a company more broadly than just, is our budget reducing year over year? And then it becomes really interesting because suddenly they've got a right to talk to the people team. They've got a right to talk to support and finance and legal and all these other folks. And I think what we as an industry need to do is come and bring solutions to those specific problems, those KPIs. Like, what is it that a platform can do that addresses that particular problem, and how? And it shouldn't require someone to log into an old-fashioned TMS dashboard and be an expert in all the drop-down menus. Like, that's not going to be how these things work. It needs to be much more native. So we have this concept of the spine and the edge, right? Something like Phrase provides a central vertebrate spine that has workflow, quality, assets, context layers, which are critically important, human workflows, approvals chains. But business gets done out on the edge, and these things need to connect to each other very, very quickly and easily, so that people get all of that value, but they get it where they need it and when they need it, and fast, and not going through some like convoluted submission to a localization team who then come back, in days, all that stuff.
Okay, why does the industry, broadly speaking, still have this messaging problem? Why do we lead with the capability and the technical stuff and not with the thing that it solves for a customer? Like, is it just shyness? Is it like a certain kind of the inward-looking component? Should just somebody be bold enough to just go ahead and build a website that basically literally doesn't talk about how the sausage is made, but the outcome, the positive outcome for the client, all these KPIs you just mentioned, basket completion rates, etc. Like, are we just too shy, or many in the industry too shy, or too reluctant, or scared, or I don't know. I mean, it seems like an easy thing to do in a sense. You have a website, you signal just the things you're solving, the things you can improve, and become. It's less of a the good old like the cost center conversation. No, you're a growth lever. You're helping a company hitting all these things, and then the spend is less important.
I think it's everything. It's everything you said. It's all of those, some combination of all of those things. And there are people in our industry that are not shy, and there are wonderful people that are. And there are there's lots and lots of people in our industry who have not had a tremendous they haven't just had a lot of business education, they're linguists and they're enthusiasts. I was in an industry that often people work in because they love it. And we're in an era where you sometimes in lots of different ways, you have to kind of disrupt yourself. And I think that's scary for people. I think also a lot of localization teams are relatively thinly resourced. And so there's a sort of sense of perpetually being only just keeping your head above water. And therefore, is there enough time for innovation? And it's probably often felt like there just wasn't. There's lots of different things, isn't there? But I do think, look, my company, myself, have a responsibility here to our customers, to the industry. And I really think of it as an industry responsibility. Like at Phrase, we'd like to play our part. I mean, we don't, we're not sort of messianic about it, but like we want to play a role in helping. And I think we can do better.
The disruption part, you don't, I mean, I guess we fundamentally wouldn't have to disrupt the actual way we work. It's a lot of the messaging, right? And the existing customers that are happy with a sophisticated solution aren't going to walk away because you're trying to signal to all the people, all this vast blue ocean of people that have absolutely no idea about what localization is, but are looking for some type of, tool or some type of AI readiness that a platform like Phrase would actually give them. So it's like, why is there this kind of fear that you're alienating your existing relatively small group of core localization advocates instead of signaling to the vast blue ocean of people that are looking for some AI tool and signaling to these guys?
A lot of companies are looking for an AI win, right? And we sort of, maybe that's one way to think about the conversation we were having earlier, which is that these engineers are trying to give the company an AI win. And what we need to do is get the lock teams to say, hey, we can give you the AI win. And it's like actually good. So that confidence to come forward and be in the spotlight a little bit. And, definitely to be clear, at Phrase, we want the LSIs to not just exist, but thrive. We want lock teams to exist and thrive. To be clear, not every software competitor of ours wants those two things. Like there are definitely software competitors of ours. I won't name them because it wouldn't be fair, but the CEOs have said to me very clearly, our ambition is to destroy those audiences. So at Phrase, I just want to be very, very clear. We want to support those audiences. Here's an example though of the challenge. I was talking to the CEO of a medium-sized LSI, roughly 50 million of turnover to give you a sense. And this person said to me, the problem is my senior people all think human first. And I said, well, we can help with that. We can help build the flows and show them. And he said, that would be great. It would make such a difference to our margin. Cool. Let's connect people up. There was a call with the CTO. The CTO was lacking enthusiasm. And it's like stalling, right? So I'll go back to that CEO and say, look, I think it's going to take you driving this to make a change. And there's quite a bit of that in LSIs of different sizes. There's quite a bit of that inside some lock teams in some enterprises. There's a sort of defensive crouch. Because, look, I mean, I'm not... things are changing around us so fast, and it is a little scary, because people don't understand where it's going. They don't know what it means for them. And you just see this slightly defensive crouch posture from lots of people. It's understandable, but it's not safe. Like when you're running away from the lion, like defensive crouch is not it's not the technique.
Run up the tree.
Yeah, run faster. And that's it. So, I mean, it's incredibly exciting. Like the things we can do with technology now are unbelievable, and the things that we've delivered in Phrase and we're about to. We actually have a launch coming up in 10 days, which is why I keep saying we're about to, because there's some really cool stuff there. And it is about moving things out of, the lab and into production. And it is about quality and confidence and scalability and all that. But I'm super excited about what we're doing. But I think we all have to acknowledge that there's a lot of kind of uncertainty out there.
One area where maybe progress has slowed down a little bit is just general translation, like AI translation quality. Would you agree with that? I mean, obviously we're at a very, very, very high level already, but I don't think we're seeing massive jumps anymore. Would you agree to that? Do you see that in practice as well?
I think it's true in terms of the foundation model. I think where there's still lots of improvements is all the stuff that you can add around that. So context is a really interesting one. People are building really good ways of bringing context in and then measuring the quality out in various ways, and then using AI to do post-editing so that the percentage that has to go to human review does continue to fall. And I think we are seeing that. So the customers that are using our platform in the most sophisticated way, they're really using all of the capabilities and not just a subset. They are absolutely seeing kind of the percentage of human review falling. And that is enabling them to do more language pairs, more content types, more volume. And the nice thing is like the volume and the cost of doing it don't scale linearly. So they spend a bit more with us, they spend a lot less on humans, they get a lot more content out. And so I think that kind of experimentation moving into production is happening. But you're right. I think the foundation models, like straightforwardly on their own, not a massive kind of standalone quality improvement.
You're based near London, right? So
I
I,
am,
I
yeah.
want to, yeah, I want to talk about London kind of as an AI hub because I don't know why, but like X just started showing me literally in the last 48 hours. Maybe I must have clicked on something, but like I've seen this huge buzz around London as an AI hub generally, and there's all these meetups, and I'm seeing like people queuing around the corner.
Yeah.
And we've had our little meetup, and SlaterCon London is shaping up to be very nice, very very well attended, etc. What are your thoughts around London kind of coming in again as an AI hub?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one specific thing happening there, but in general, which I'll touch on, but I think in general, uh, London has, you know, always been the leading kind of venture capital location in Europe. Paris is probably next, particularly around AI, but London has always been like up there. Google has big offices, Anthropic has offices, OpenAI has a small presence, but they just recently committed to growing. Um, and I think the government has generally been very supportive of AI, and there's some really smart people from the tech ecosystem that are advising government as well. So I think there's um, there's a there's a very good tech ecosystem in London. It's very mature, and outside of San Francisco, then New York, then London. It's probably that's the order I would guess. I think very specifically, I read something myself this morning, which may partially explain it, which is that since Anthropic fell out with the Department of War recently, the mayor of London wrote a letter to Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, inviting him to relocate to London, and that letter was leaked to the Times. So it may be that uh, X has sort of picked up on some of this buzz and is amplifying it.
Looks like it. Looks like it. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's good for you. I mean, you guys are there. We're there. So I guess
Yeah. Deep,
not bad.
DeepMind is here, right?
Yeah.
They were Demis Hassabis, based in London, I think, still. Yeah.
So let's move to the outlook portion of this podcast, which usually closes it. So let me, what are you seeing in 2026? We're in March. You said that, 2025 was a lot of expectations that might have not been met. Now, some of these expectations are being met, which then, it triggers some of the uncertainty, I guess, also. But yeah, what are your thoughts around the rest of the year?
I think that the event horizon is like definitely narrower, and in part because all of these models are changing the way that not just companies like us, how the products work, but also how we do the work, right? And I think all companies are going to experience that at different stages. I think at Phrase, we're probably experiencing that sooner than most for a few reasons. One is we're small enough with 300 people that um, uh, things can happen quickly, right? Friends of mine who work for big institutions, um, they might want to play with Claude at work, but they're not allowed to, right? There's a lot more guardrails. Company like us, we've very quickly pivoted to providing security, privacy, guardrails, policy, and training. And I mean, we were doing all of that with ChatGPT from the very early days, but the recent model developments with Opus 4.6 in particular sees us concentrate a lot more on Claude, and just people around the business are doing the most unbelievable things. And what's interesting about that, it's kind of fractal. Like, if, and you've probably experienced it yourself, if you sit down with Claude and you start building, before you know it, you've had three more ideas. And you start building those, and each of those kicks off three more ideas each. So that's nine. So you're like, it goes 1, 3, 9, 27. It very quickly spirals out. So one of the interesting things for companies generally over the next couple of years is going to be how the nature of information work is. I think we are at that cusp where it's going to fundamentally change, and very quickly. And so, how companies figure out the implications of that, what does it mean for, roles? I mean, someone asked me a good question the other day, but if I'm a PM using this, it's now very easy for me to kind of step on the toes of engineering or QA. And it's like, what should we do? Should we stay in our swim lanes or not? So we have to redefine the swim lanes. Like everyone becomes a bit more full stack everything, right? So if you're a PM, you're a full stack PM. If you're an engineer, you're a full stack engineer. If you're in marketing, you're a full stack marketer. Like these are the changes that are going to come to the world at large. And I think because of our size, because as a company, we're quite innovative, forward thinking. We embrace these things. We want to be on the leading edge. We want to learn by doing. That's a phrase we're using a lot. No pun intended. And so we're experiencing that. I think other companies will too, at different rates. So that's that. I think the implications of that and how it plays out in technology at large and the product, I think we're going to see different ways of interacting with our spine, enabling customers to pull the capabilities of that spine into different places that they work in a more fluid way than they've been able to do in the past. I think we want to open up the value that we bring beyond it being kind of curated through a lock team, but the lock team will still remain in control. I think we move away from the concept of translation and localization as our industry to something more around, we've got to still work out the sort of the right language to use, but I think it's like content delivery, content adaptation.
Language solutions. We call it language solutions and AI. That's what we're signaling right now. I know it's hard, but like
Yeah, and we're trying to work out how we talk about that in a way. One thing that's hard is everyone was talking about TMS for far too long, and I cheered when you guys pioneered LSI instead. But then, of course, as soon as everyone becomes LSI, then you want to stand out again. So we'll probably like continue to use the language LSI for others, but find an even slightly tweaked way of positioning ourselves in front of that.
You're an LTP. You're a language technology platform. Let the LSIs be the LSI. I recently read I think Milengo, an LSI, kind of sent out an official press release that they're now redefining themselves as an LSI, away from an LSP to an LSI. So it's getting traction.
It is.
And it makes more sense. Just that now that we've been used to this kind of framework for a year, it just makes more sense to speak about it. Lots of solutions, and you integrate them.
No, I think it has really caught on. I think you all did an amazing job. I mean, I told you that at the time, and I think it has helped reframe things. So you're right, LTP. Sorry, that's the problem with going to bed at 2:00 in the morning. It's the words get tumbled sometimes.
The fractality took you to like 4 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So maybe then it's about also deciding which problem, which fractal you're going to follow. Even as a company, like there's like 100 ideas, and like you could explore all of them, but you got to be disciplined. And
100% true. And look, it's going back to the build and buy thing. This is also the problem that internal teams are going to have, right? So someone gets excited because they do a little demo of a bit of quick translation, but then they go down the rabbit hole, right? And this is if you want to go down the rabbit hole, it's deep. It's very deep. So I think this is what CFOs need to pay attention to, because right around their companies, people are going to be building, not just in language, but in all sorts of areas. They're going to be building things that they shouldn't be building, as well as things they should. And that's not even controversial. Of course they are. There'll be there's no like perfect decision-making framework. And the question is going to be, should they really be rebuilding building blocks, or should they take LTPs like us and others, build on top of the APIs, build on top of the MCPs, and build on top of the ecosystem, and take that business to the next level. That's the interesting one.
Let me just explore this for one more second. I mean, the question is, what's really the point? Like, you want to save 10, 20, 30K a year on a specific tool because what? Because you now want to bring everything in-house and run it on some AI that you build in-house, and that you then will eventually need to maintain, instead of like focusing on your core value as a business?
It doesn't sound very sensible, does it? But
it doesn't. It doesn't. It really does not.
I think there's two drivers. One is cost, pretty consistently, and I think the calculus there is myopic. People look at a software spend and they forget the total cost of ownership, all the salaries and the long-term commitment, and they also forget the risk, right? The sort of key person dependency that often arises as a result of this. The other aspect that I've heard people talk about is sort of control and speed, and that is where I think the LSIs do need to be very awake to that, because if they're not able to match the speed and the kind of reporting and the control that the customers want, then it does become something that the customers want to take back away from the LSI. So we're trying to work with people to be a bit more tech forward and agile. And I think that's something customers do want.
All right. Well, another fascinating episode, round 3. Looking forward to round 4 in, I don't know, 2028, 2027. Let's see. Thank you so much, Georg.
Before that, otherwise it'd just be avatars.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time.